Yo, and welcome to Beyond the Cot, the F3 Knoxville podcast, streaming live from Knoxville, Tennessee, where we focus in on connecting and growing the men of F3 Knoxville and beyond in all three F's: fitness, fellowship, and faith, and also center in on calling out the champion in every single man that posted F3, whether that's here in F3 Knoxville, here in the state of Tennessee, or anywhere in F3 Nation. We want to call out the champion in you. So you'll hear from our guys here in Knoxville, you'll hear from guys in Tennessee, you'll hear from guys in F3 Nation about the authentic lives they are living as high impact men, and as we get to do this crazy thing called iron sharpens iron together, not only in F3, but also beyond the cot. All right, hello, welcome to Beyond the Cot. This is the F3 Knoxville podcast, and I am Steam, and here for the first live episode, actually, really, or live recording, I have none other than
Guppy.
Yes. Some of you might know him as Ben Meyer. Guppy is his F3 name, and so this is kind of cool because we are live. We're in the same room. We're socially distanced, which is good. But we wanted to just have a conversation for this episode about spiritual amnesia and kind of dive into that and talk about this idea of even after we are believers, this idea of becoming and what that looks like, and how the enemy can work really hard to give us spiritual amnesia sometimes. So Guppy, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Glad you're here, man. Also, quick plug to Heart and Soul Church. This episode is sponsored by none other than Stacy Gehring's Puppy Chow. Stacy Gehring's Puppy Chow, available at Heart and Soul Church. She does not know that she is featured in this episode yet, but she will. She will. So, Stacy, to you and your Puppy Chow, which is amazing. Thank you. All right, so Guppy, tell us a little bit about your F3 story first. Like, how'd you get Guppy? When you started F3? Who was the fool that convinced you to come to F3?
Sure. So I'd say the fool that convinced me to come to F3, like about half of F3 Knoxville, was G6.
Oh, yeah.
Probably about back sometime when I was with him in his Bible study. He convinced me and a group of guys to come out to Asylum AM, and it was first workout, and afterwards got into the middle and just telling people about myself and told them that I swam for Tennessee, and just about everybody started shouting out names, and Guppy stuck.
Guppy, like it. Now, you started 4 years ago? You're almost 4 years ago.
Oh, that was early spring 17. So,
okay.
Yeah, that was 4 years ago.
Yeah, okay, so we probably started about the same time,
yeah.
I would say, yeah. So, fun fact, Guppy and I were in the same Bible study. He came before me, but G6 leads this small group of guys in college called Warriors. And so that's how I found out about it too. And we were both in the Cross, the Greek Life Christian ministry that we were both part of at UT. So that's really cool. I never knew how you got Guppy though, but that makes sense because you're swimming.
Guppy,
right?
Swimmer, makes sense.
Yeah, there you go. So cool. So we are going to get into some cool things today, just like I mentioned, with kind of the spiritual amnesia. But also I figured we'll probably talk about Heart and Soul Church as well.
Yeah.
Because that's very, very fresh for both of us a little bit, at least new, and it's been something really cool that's been happening in our lives that we get to pour into as well. So let's start with this idea of spiritual amnesia. And I think a good place to start would probably be the definition, amnesia, which I had to look up in all seriousness. So amnesia is a partial or total loss of memory. So how we got here, first of all. So we were watching a episode or a YouTube video from a guy named Jerry Flowers. He's a pastor out of Texas, and he was talking about spiritual amnesia sometimes and how the enemy works really, really hard to give us spiritual amnesia. So this partial loss of memory, and especially after we become believers and after we come into the body and start to live this new way and start to live for Christ, I think that's something that terrifies the enemy, and somewhere that he does work overtime to kind of give us spiritual amnesia, because it causes us to forget that we are new in Christ, and even before you're a believer as well. I think one thing that maybe could be a good cornerstone is the enemy. So Satan, he doesn't want to knock us out. He just wants to exhaust us, right? So we're both believers, and F3 is not a Christian organization, but a huge part of the BOM, or the ball of man, the encouraging word that guys share after they lead F3 or lead the workout is up to the guy that leads. And so F3 accepts all men. You don't have to be a certain religion. You don't have to be a certain type of anything. But one of the cool things about F3 is we do get to be open about our faith. And so being believers, that's something that Guppy and I refer to when we lead F3. We get to talk about things in our lives. So when did you, I guess, become a believer, or when did you kind of step into that? And like, when you hear the term spiritual amnesia, like, how does that hit you?
I'd say I first became a believer, I guess, middle school, high school time frame. Going to Young Life, was in
Nice.
Bible studies with same guys middle through high school, and in that time I came to know Christ, and I also started experiencing first episodes of spiritual amnesia. Just getting sidetracked with life, and I guess not being as devoted to the Bible and to studying the Word and to getting to know God like I should have after I committed my life to Christ. That was probably one of the first episodes of spiritual amnesia, and it lasted a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but I kind of came back around and recommitted myself again senior year of high school, and got back with Bible studies, and got with G6 again. So
Nice. What's high school? What's up?
Yeah.
That's cool. And I think that's a lot of guys' stories, or guys and girls' stories, people's stories, right? Of like they came to Christ in middle school, high school, or before, right? And because that's what you did. Like if your parents were around, that's what you grew up with. If you grew up with that, and so that's the easy part, right? Of this is the thing to do, but like what happens after? Like how do you do this thing called being a new creation in Christ after? Sometimes I think there's this misconception of once we're a new creation, once we believe in God, like, we're never going to mess up. We're never gonna stray. We're supposed to live this life of, okay, you're on a new path, and like that's your path. Like you're not going to ever be tempted to go back to the old path. And that's just like not true. Like it's just not.
Yeah, too true. That's what I thought too when I first gave my life to Christ, and even later in life, I was like, why am I having these struggles? I'm a Christian. I gave my life to Christ. What's going on? I guess I just didn't understand just how strong the devil can attack you, and how subtle it can be. Yeah,
and subtle is a great word for that too, which I want to mention, because there are times when it's like, holy crap, where did that come from? And it's apparent that the enemy, I think, works in very, very mysterious ways, that he kind of lives out this whole, like, hey, I'm coming here to steal, kill, and destroy. And I think, like I said before, like he knows the Bible, right? So he knows how the story ends. Like he can't defeat us, but he can exhaust us, and I think he works tirelessly to exhaust us. So same thing for me, kind of, so grew up in the Christian home, did the whole church thing, like did all that good stuff, and was a Christian for all intensive labeling purposes, but didn't really have any guidance of like, well, how does this look after, like as you go through middle school, high school, and college. Like on the last episode with Junk, I was like, hey, I was kind of a huge idiot. Like in college, like the front nine of college was pretty rough for Dan the Man over here, you know? And the back nine was kind of rough too, but like it was better, right? Because I had people surrounded me that kind of reminded me who I was and reminded me of, I think, God's goodness and grace. And so this idea of spiritual amnesia, of a partial loss of memory, there are things I think the enemy puts in our path intentionally to knock us out, to give us amnesia and cause us to forget who we are and how we're called by our true name. And I think if he can do that enough, it gets exhausting to try and put up that fight every single time. And I'll just give an example of this, you know, recently of spiritual amnesia. So it's easy to do the motions, right? Like you know, you're in a small group, maybe you're going to F3. If you're one of our F3 guys, you're hearing some kind of devotion, some kind of encouraging word. At the very end of the workout, you're going to church. Maybe you're going to church, right? You know, so you might be checking off that box on Sunday. It's easy to go through the motions and forget, like, oh, well, what happens Monday through Saturday, right? Like, if you go to church, that isn't just a checked off box. And so I think one thing that I've struggled with in 2020, from a list of numerous things, because #2020, but one thing that I really struggle with is forgetting my worth and name, and turning to things that may not give me life. Spoiler alert, they do not give me life, right? And so this idea of spiritual amnesia of like I'm doing the right thing, like I really want to be in the Word, I'm really pursuing this, but also I feel like sometimes I have a loss of memory that kicks in, and it's like, wait, how did I get here? Like, how did this happen? Like, what? I should know better than this, right? And it's frustrating. And so this year I found myself in that, like working from home, just being here literally all the time. It's like, wait, whoa, how did we get here? Like, I should know better than this. Like how did I lose my memory so much and have this short lapse of, oh man, where are we, kind of thing, you know? So has those moments kind of like been something that you've experienced in your life, or maybe recently?
Yeah, I'd say probably one of the longest and probably strongest episodes of amnesia for me was after freshman year of college, or I guess ending freshman year of college, going into my sophomore year. I started getting a lot better at swimming, getting a lot faster, placing better at meets, and I just kept thinking to myself, man, I'm good. You know what? I'm like a Greek god. I mean, I'm at the top of my game. I'm in, like, the top 100 in the nation in what I do, and my pride was just way too big. I could barely fit through that door. My head was so big, and I just walked away from I guess God, and didn't really think too much about it. I'd go through the motions, go to church on Sundays, go to a Bible study here or there, but I really wasn't, in it. I wasn't focused on it. I was just walking through the motions, and it really took a real reckoning for me to reawaken and come back, snap out of that amnesia episode. It was in college, going into my junior year, when I blew 2 discs in my lower back, thus ending my swimming career. So my head deflated very quickly, and I saw that the real true constant in my life is Christ and God. So that's where I turned back to. And turned back to the cross, where I met good old Steam.
Oh man, the cross, yes. Oh yeah, it was my junior year, and you were senior, or you were graduating, weren't you?
Well, I came back to the cross my junior year, which would have been your sophomore year, so I don't think you were here yet.
No, okay, so it must have been your senior year, my junior
year.
Yeah,
so it was my senior year that you came in your junior year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So for all of y'all who don't know, the Cross, it's the Cross Greek Life Ministry. Ministers to Greek Life students at UT. Not just Greek Life students, but that's kind of like where we focus on and where we pour a lot of our resources into. And so being in that community, like Guppy said, was really sweet for different reasons for both of us. But I think we both got to see and kind of experience a re-invitation back into the light, which sounds really cheesy, but like a re-invitation back into hey, remember when you used to be called by your true name, like the true name God gives you, like the true name the Father gives you? You know, it's like, let me re-invite you into that because of people I'm going to put in your life, because of messages I'm going to let you hear, because of experiences I'm going to let you go through, you know? And so that was a really sweet time for us because we got to like rekindle our friendship as well, right? And then invite other people into that, which is cool. So kind of that discipleship thing. But even going through all that stuff, it's like, we could be going to the cross every week. We could be going to church every week, and like you said, it's not like all that stuff goes away, and it's not like these episodes of, man, I'm so quick to forget like what's important, or I'm so quick to forget like what I should be focused on, you know. And I was just looking up something that came to my mind immediately about this is in Romans 7. So he's talking about like basically I don't understand what I'm doing, and like I do what I don't want to do, but you know. And then so there's this idea of spiritual amnesia in here, and so I'm just gonna read it for us here. So in verse 13. So Romans 7:13. Did that which is good then become death to me? By no means. Nevertheless, in order that sin might be recognized as sin, it used what is good to bring about my death, so that through the commandment sin might become utterly sinful. We know that the law is spiritual, but I am unspiritual, sold as a slave to sin. I do not understand what I do, for what I want to do I do not do, but what I hate I do. Let's let that sink in for a second. And if I do what I do not want to do, I agree that the law is good. And it is no longer I myself who do it, but it is sin living in me. For I know that good itself does not dwell in me, that is, in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. And if I do what I do not want to do, it is no longer I who do it, but it is sin living in me that does it. So I find this law at work. Although I want to do good, evil is right there with me. For in my inner being I delight in God's law, but I see another law at work in me, waging war against the law of my mind, and making me a prisoner of the law of sin at work within me. What a wretched man I am! Who will rescue me from this body that is subject to death? Thanks be to God who delivers me through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then I myself in my mind am a slave to God's law, but in my sinful nature a slave to the law of sin. And mic drop. That's the episode. Thank you. No. But yeah, let's unpack that for a second, because this is something I've read before, and I'm like, oh man, yeah, this makes sense. Where I would get really pissed off at myself and be like, why am I doing, like, I know better than this, you know, like why am I doing this, or why am I not doing this? You know, let's flip that on its head a little bit. And so specifically in verse 18, for I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. And if I do what I do not want to do, it is no longer I who do it, but it is sin living in me that does it. So when you hear that, and when you kind of dissect that, I think there's this kind of inner war or inner dialogue of conversation that happens for me, and I'm sure to some degree for everyone else, of like, hey, I like really want to live this new way. Like I have been saved by grace. It's something I didn't deserve, you know, but I really want to live this new way. But like, also, why do these things keep hounding me? Why do these things keep like showing up? Like, why do I keep having this spiritual amnesia from time to time, you know? And why are we so quick to forget who we're called to be in Christ? I think kind of like Paul was talking about here in Romans 7.
Well, I think it's we're just comfortable with our old ways. And I mean, once we give our life to Christ, it's not all sunshines and rainbows and easy to just walk off into the sunset with Jesus. We have to be intentional every day. We have to, deny our old sin or our old selves and sacrifice to God all our ambition that we wanted for ourselves, our selfish ambition, our pride, our lust for whatever we want. And I mean, if you aren't ready to do that, then you're bound to have another episode of Amnesia, and who knows how long it'll last. It may last a year, may last a lifetime. I pray to God that no one lasts a lifetime. Right. But I think we're just not ready to give up on our selfish earthly dreams and ambitions, and devote ourselves to God. Deny ourselves every morning and pick up our cross and go with Christ. I think that's one thing that I've found of why I keep having episodes of Amnesia.
Yeah. And just to rewind and give some backstory here a little bit, why did we want to have this conversation and talk about, like, hey, we mess up a lot and we want to talk about it, So we got a chance to have this conversation with a few other guys in F3 over a weekend in a cabin, and we're like, let's talk this out a little bit, and so that's kind of the heart for this as well. So that's really good, because I think it's encouraging to know just because you live this new life and you're saved by grace does not mean that you're going to do everything perfectly, right? Doesn't mean that you're going to just be able to walk sunshines and rainbows, like you said, Gup. But kind of pivoting to also heart and soul, because that's a pretty big thing in both of our lives now, which blessing. Huge shout out to Heart and Soul Church here in Knoxville. But the pastor, Austin Coleman, talked about this idea of control as well. So just like you mentioned, there are things that we have a really hard time letting go of and giving up control, because we really want to be in control, right? And I think the enemy knows that, and he uses that as a weapon and weaponizes it to give us these episodes of spiritual amnesia, and that's not always a fun place to go, because then, for me, what I do is I get in my head, and I'm so quick to remember, or so quick to forget. Is that right? Yeah.
So quick to forget.
Quick to forget or quick to remember? I don't know.
To forget.
So quick to forget. That just because Jesus gives us freedom doesn't mean he's going to push us out the door. It's going to require something of us, I think that's good to think about. Yeah. So, heart and soul, since we're on the topic, since we're on the topic, I think we have a pretty cool story of how we came to Heart and Soul, and how this conversation even came about, or how this little seed of wanting to do this episode came about. So you want to dive into that? Of hey, how do we show up here in high school on Sunday?
So I guess
when was launch day?
When was launch day?
August.
No, it was September. It was September 15th, I think.
It was a Sunday in September.
I think it was Sunday, September 15th, because we launched our first series in October.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So, launch day was, I believe, I might get kicked in the butt by Austin if he listens to this, but I think it was September 15th. And we had seen ads on Facebook and Instagram for this cool new church, Heart and Soul. It was going to be meeting at Bearden High School.
Nice shirt.
And repping right now.
All our viewers
cannot
see it at all. That's great.
Yeah, so Dan told me about it, and I saw some ads throughout the week after he told me about it. I was like, yeah, let's go, man. I've been looking for a church, kind of tired of searching around Knoxville, and we get there, and it's fire, man. The worship is awesome. The Austin's message was fantastic. But after having been to so many churches, I was kind of skeptical. I was like, you know what, God, I've been to a lot of churches, and none of them have felt right. And this one kind of just feels a little bit weird, but it just opened my eyes to this church. And if this is where I need to be, and this is where you want me to be, then make my heart for it. And that's exactly what he did. He made my heart for it, and we've found great community here. We've had great small group throughout this fall, and we miss them right now, but that's a reason that we decided to go on that retreat over a weekend, and just kind of explore. I guess
like we just wanted to, I think, refocus.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Feeling like, man, I've been so unfocused this year.
Exactly. 2020 has been a great trial for, I think, the world,
right?
Especially us two. I mean, in late 2020, I broke my ankle and have been out of commission for a while. So that's just another thing on top of 2020. And just throughout, especially me, have lost focus on our devotion to Christ and to each other and expanding the kingdom of Lord. Yeah,
which is not just something like easy to say. It's not like, oh man, this is like, yeah, totally. That's like, oh man, yeah, I really kind of maybe fell off the horse, more than I want to admit, and that's not something that's just super fun to admit or super fun to say, right?
No, you don't want to admit that you're wrong, that you failed. I mean, especially as a man, it hurts.
Yeah, right. And another cool thing, so about this whole story coming into Heart and Soul, and F3 as well. So Onesie in F3, otherwise known as Jonathan Desai, he shows up on the scene for our party, which is what Heart and Soul calls their small groups, because we believe that being in Christ is a party, and it should be. And so Jonathan Desai rolls on the scene, and so we get this talking. We're like, yeah, so me and Guppy do this thing called F3. He's like, oh, dude, no way. And so he's like, my name is Onesie. And we're like, what? No way. And so we realized that we were all F3 guys in our first meeting of our party. And so that's kind of a cool plug as well, how the Lord orchestrates those relationships, And so like Guppy was saying, the three of us had this idea of just like, okay, we're really unfocused. We really want to focus in on what's important and have some great fellowship together, but also just invite the Lord into the mess that 2020 has been, and get to kind of share that with each other as a collective of men on a weekend retreat, So we did that a month ago or so.
Yeah, thereabouts,
something like that. And it was really cool because then Austin started his sermon on how to win back 2020. And we're like, well, gosh, that is just perfect timing,
Yes.
And so that really hit home for us, and so that's where this idea was birthed from. And so one thing I think that we can both confidently say about Heart and Soul is it has really been such a gift for both of us to kind of help us fight that spiritual amnesia and help us remember who we really are in Christ. And I know we both experienced that, me and Guppy, in F3, but also outside of F3 at Heart and Soul. And so I think that those two, for us, have a very special, intricate relationship that we've seen kind of intertwine and connect in the past few months. And that has been a huge gift. Huge gift.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's been really cool to get to invite guys and girls into that too. And I think that's kind of what we were pumped about doing this episode for, of okay, let's talk about spiritual amnesia. Let's talk about some of the struggles we've gone through this year, just as younger men in their 20s, and how that relates to F3, whether we are leading F3, whether we are in a F3 circle, or whether we are getting to pour into some awesome things like Heart and Soul or the Cross at UT. And so I would be remiss if we didn't have okay, so we have all this information, what do we do with it, and there is this great book called The Blue Book by Jim Branch. It's on Amazon. I would be more than happy to get anyone a copy. And basically, it is a devotional he wrote years ago. So a devotional guide for every season of your life. But it is packed with different chapters. So, for instance, some of the chapters are called devotion, listening to God, loved by God, letting go, between, becoming. And so there are all these chapters that are tailored to different seasons of life. And so Guppy and I have kind of gone back to this book a lot over the years because it's been pretty formational in both of our lives, I would say.
Yes.
And so what I want to read is there's this part from becoming. And so when you think about becoming, when you think about kind of, Guppy, your becoming, who you are today, my becoming process, it's been a painful process. Like when you think of pruning,
absolutely,
it's like,
yes.
Like it's not been an easy process, and it's not like we're done, right? I mean, it's not like we have it figured out. We are the best man in the world.
I'm not that proud to admit that. I'm proud to admit that I don't know that much. I still have lots of pruning left.
Yeah. I mean, we all do. But the Blue Book has been cool for that because we're going to dive into a lot of cool things with becoming. And so what I want to read is this, and then we'll kind of tease it out and like talk about it a little bit. So here we go. We die. Indeed, we have to die in order to be resurrected, restored, and renewed. We die and we die and we die in this life, not only physically. Within 7 years, every cell in your body is renewed. I did not know that. But emotionally and spiritually, as change seizes us by the scruff of the neck and drags us forward into another life. We are not here simply to exist. We are here in order to become. So that is from the Blue Book here that Jim Branch wrote. So I wanted to kind of go into our closing time with this of, okay, what does it look like to become? Like, did you think becoming look different in your early 20s than it does your late 20s? Or maybe in high school or college, like, what does that process look like for you? And what does it look like now?
Oh gosh. High school, early college, I had no clue really what was going to come in my becoming.
Nice. Good.
I really didn't know what was coming in my different pruning seasons. Many have been painful, but all of them have been beneficial. I've, learned where my limitations are, learned, where to stay away from temptation in certain areas, and how to, stay as close to honoring God in what I do as I can. But, it's not always the easiest, especially when, you're weak and, there's a beautiful woman that comes by and says, hey, what's up? And kind of distracts you for a couple months or a year or so. And then you're like, oh gosh, what am I doing? I need to get back. And you got to prune some stuff.
Yeah. Jeez. Oh gosh. And I feel like it's almost harder when you self-prune because it's going to suck and it's going to be hard, but it's going to be for good, right? Which in turn, like, that's also, I think, God pruning us as well, by giving us the mentality of like, oh, there's some things in life that I probably need to prune off my tree, and that's not a easy place to be all the time, but becoming, I think, for me, so in my early 20s, like coming out of high school, going into college, my becoming looked so different than now. And I don't think it's because I just sucked up the courage and realized I needed to be better, Like I think it was more of God strategically placing me in front of people and messages like the Cross, like the Knoxville Fellows, like F3, right? Like Heart and Soul, that kind of catalyzed this becoming process for me, and helped me come out of this spiritual amnesia episode or episodes, and really kind of rehear the invitation I think God gives us. And I think a lot of it has to do with with who we choose to spend our time with, you know? So like Guppy has been a true friend for me, you know, and like that goes with all the F3 guys as well. You know, if you're an F3, you know me by Steam, you know Guppy or Ben by Guppy, right? Like those are our F3 names, right? And as younger men in F3, for me, that's been a huge catalyst for me becoming the man that I want to be and the man God needs me to be. Mm-hmm. And so reading this kind of in the blue book, going back here, we are not here simply to exist. We are here in order to become. And I think there's such a sweet invitation in that in my late 20s now, or going into my late 20s, because your boy's 26, you know?
Hey, 27 months old.
There you go. You know, we got a couple good years left. So.
Yeah.
Going into late 20s, it's different. And what my last guest, Junk, and I were talking about on the podcast was you have these Ebenezers or these embrace the suck moments where it's like, oh, I can point back to that and be like, oh, that was somewhere I was going through the becoming process, or that was something I was going through that sucked, but it was part of my becoming process, right? And I think the becoming process is filled with things that are good and bad because we need both. It can't just be one or the other, you know? And so I would just really encourage people that are listening to this to own where you're at, but don't sit in it. I think we have a certain responsibility to, hey, this is where I'm at, but this is not where I want to be, and I know this is probably not where I'm called to be right now. And I struggle with that. Like, I had a really hard time accepting that of like, this is where I'm at, and I'm going to sit in it. Well, and that's just not good all the time, right? So this idea of own where you're at, but realize this is not your final resting place. This is not where you're supposed to stay at, right? So yeah, thoughts on that?
You know, I was just sitting here listening more than really thinking about it, but you know, I guess my latest, pruning and becoming has happened in the past 3-4 months. I mean, you know, going from a relationship where, you know, I'm content and I'm happy and, you know, don't really want it to change, and all of a sudden it's gone, and I'm, you know, all right, that's one thing pruned, and I had to refocus and try to figure out what to do. And, you know, next thing I knew it, I'm have a broken ankle and I'm out of commission on IR. So I really took me a bit of time to, I guess, focus and come back to God and to my true base. And that retreat really helped focus on what to prune, on what to focus on cutting out of my life so I can focus more solidly on Christ.
Yeah, and there's a whisper in there, I think, that it's like, refocus, you know? And usually I'm like, snooze, snooze, you know?
I love that snooze button, but, you know, at some point you have to get up. You have to face it, and you got to face the day.
Yeah. I mean, like with our F3 guys, like that's a very physical thing. Of like, okay, 5 a.m. rolls around, 4:30 rolls around, you know, it's easy, like snooze. But like there are dudes that are going to be counting on your presence to come to F3 and work out and push them to be better men. Just like personally, for yourself and for your community, it's easy to do snooze. But like that's just prolonging your becoming process, right? You know, like there are so many better things, like so many good things that the Lord has for you in your life. But it's not like he just drops them on a plate and says, here you go. You know, it's like we have to be active in that process and be active in kingdom work and kind of living out the kingdom, you know, for that. Not that there's any reward per se of like, if I do this, then this happens.
Not on earth.
Well, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, not on earth.
Not on earth, yes. Which is good because earth is not our final resting place. Right?
Can't take it with you when you leave.
No, you cannot. I wish I could take Stacy's puppy chow. Oh, that's what. Man, she's gonna have to start selling this by the bowl.
For real, man.
She'd make a killing. But yeah, this is something I think we are really excited about to talk about. Just to be vulnerable and just flesh some stuff out, right? Because this is not a fun conversation necessarily. I mean, I think it's been fun, to be fair.
I mean, honestly, yeah, I have. I mean, we've had a couple conversations like this prior, so
yeah.
I think we've gotten comfortable with each other talking about this. And
yeah, let's be fair. I think this is fun. I think we both think this is fun. This is not like I guess we have to have this conversation about like spiritual amnesia and becoming better men in Christ, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's.
But for the normal person, probably, I mean, and to some degree, everyone, kind of talking about your faults and weaknesses and having spiritual amnesia is not something that's just like, yes, I can't wait to just dive into that vulnerable place,
Yeah.
But we wanted to share this and wanted to just have an open conversation about it and hope that someone hears this that is like, oh man, that's really cool. Like I'm in that same place too. Like shoot us a DM. Yeah. Like if you're in F3 Knoxville, like hit us up. If you're a heart and soul, like hit us up. Like part of being in the body, and I think part of everyone's redemption story is we get to now turn around and be like, hey, here's some cool things that happened in my life that were really hard, but like the Lord was working, and now I get to talk about that and share that, right? Which is fun and difficult, but there's Ben and Dan's, there's Steam and Guppies that are younger than us that need to hear that just as much as we did when we first came into F3, when we first came into the cross, when we first started going to heart and soul. It's like there's always going to be those people that like someone needs to hear this because I needed to hear that, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. There's God's words will never fall upon deaf ears, and I think there's always somebody out there that needs to hear it, whether they know it right now or not. I mean,
that's a word.
I mean, we're just speaking our stories, but I think there's somebody out there that can take something from that and hopefully, find something better in their life, change their life.
That's a word. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Well, brother, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Man, this has been fun. So we do a Name-O-Rama, obviously, like we do in F3 on every podcast. So, as this podcast has grown, I realize we don't have just F3 people that are listening to this. So if you're listening to this, F3 has some code words, like we have nicknames for things. So the Name-O-Rama is basically after a workout gets done, we go around, we number off, we say our name, we say our hospital name, our age, and our F3 name. That's just something cool that we do in F3. And so Guppy and I will do that. So my friend, go ahead.
All right. Ben Meyer, 27, Guppy.
And this is your host of Beyond the Cot, the F3 Knoxville podcast, Dan Henson, 26, Steam. What is up, everyone? Hope y'all enjoyed this episode. I know Guppy and I had a great time recording this conversation and just taking a deep dive into spiritual amnesia and just talking about the process of becoming for both of us here in the past few years. A quick shout out to Heart and Soul Church. Just like we mentioned in this episode, Heart and Soul Church has been a tremendous game changer in both of our lives and so many other lives in Knoxville as well. And we just want to invite you into that space. Maybe you're looking for your people. Maybe you're looking for your place. Maybe you're looking for community. Maybe you're just looking for truth, man. We want to invite you into that space. Heart and Soul Church just has a big emphasis on calling out the champion in everyone and filling heaven from right here in Knoxville. There have been so many awesome things that Guppy and I have gotten to experience with just being at Heart and Soul Church and serving in Heart and Soul Church and getting to see that firsthand, right? Because someone called out the champion in us. So how can we not turn around and invite others into that space? Hey, if you want to know more, check out Heart and Soul Church on Facebook or heartandsoul.church online. We are at Bearden High School at 10 a.m. on Sundays, and we want to call out the champion in you. So once again, thank you for listening to this episode. I hope it blesses you wherever you are at, and iron sharpens iron.